Auburn's receivers are bigger. What does that mean for 2023?
Freezing temperatures are likely for several hours inland and a few hours closer to the coast.
Yes.
You are Locked On Auburn, your daily podcast on the Auburn Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, welcome on into Locked On Auburn, your daily Auburn Tigers podcast. I'm your host, Zac Blackerby, and thank you so much for making Locked On Auburn your first listen every single day. Happy Ferg Friday to all who celebrate. We are joined by Justin Ferguson of the Auburn Observer. And look, I think you nailed it with your newsletter that you sent out from the Auburn Observer earlier in the week. Auburn getting bigger in the passing game. Now, can they get better? Because I think the biggest takeaway from a lot of people in this, the pictures that have come out, and obviously the media that was able to watch the open viewing period, was like, oh my gosh, Nick Mardner is a giant. Like, he is a big boy. We'll see if he can kind of turn it into, more production in the passing game. But a lot of big options, and you documented that well in your newsletter earlier this week.
Yeah, that was the first thing that jumped out to me when I was out there at practice on Monday. Was just, not only the size of the guys out there, but where they were. Nick Mardner and Rivaldo Fairweather, the two new transfers, really out there with the first team guys. Additionally, Camden Brown, a guy who I think everybody on the planet that was watching Auburn football was probably clamoring to see more of last season, and you didn't see him. But Hugh Freeze, and I asked him about this on Monday, Hugh Freeze has a track record of using bigger guys out wide. He believes in it because, according to him, you got to have a good catch radius. You're not going to get wide open on every play in the SEC. And if you go look, PFF had a thing of the top 10 receivers in the SEC this past year, the ones that got, I think, 700 yards. Of those top 10, or I think it was 6 of the top 8, I think it was the right thing. 6 of the top 8, all those guys had like a good number of contested catches last season. Auburn didn't have very many of them last year. He had a few from John Sandwich-Shanker. He had a few from Coy Moore. What separates you usually, unless you're a guy like Jalen Hyatt, who ran wide open all season for Tennessee, or a guy like Lad McConkey, who got really open for Georgia all last season, you need to be, if you're going to be one of the better receivers in the SEC, you're going to have to be a guy who makes plays when it's tough. And the size is going to be a huge part of it. I mean, everybody knows Javarius Johnson and Coy Moore. These are two productive receivers that Auburn's bringing back. Those are great, and you can definitely use them.
Right.
But this team is lacking in terms of big guys on the outside or at tight end who have productive, who can be productive for this team. So now you're seeing Mardner, Fairweather, and Brown with those first guys in practice on Monday. Landen King, there's other guys that they're going to be continuing to rotate in there, and like they need that desperately, because really for the last couple of seasons, your best receivers for Auburn for the most part have been kind of smaller guys.
Yeah.
And it's just hard to have a complete passing game that way.
Yeah, I mean, it looked like the starters that I saw from left to right, this is, I guess, if Auburn was in a 4 wide receiver set, which I don't think we're going to see a whole lot, but maybe we will. Camden Brown, the far left, and then Javarius Johnson at left slot, Coy Moore at the right slot, and then Nick Mardner at the far right wide receiver. That surprised me a little bit.
And then you have Rivaldo Fairweather kind of floating around as a tight end,
right?
Sometimes split out wide. And I mean, they got it. And there was a lot of packages they were working through. One of the things when we were there on Monday, you see in Philip Montgomery, standing there like in front of the quarterback and looking at the receivers and saying, all right, here's the personnel package we're running. Here's what we're doing. And so you could see the kind of moving around. We saw some stack sets. We saw some bunch sets. We saw, tight end split out wide. We saw, guys moving around in trips and stuff like that. So it's going to be that kind of, you need that variety, but you also need size in that variety because as good as Javarius Johnson can be at getting open deep downfield, as good as he is a route runner, as good as Coy Moore can be, you need guys that, from time to time, you're going to get a one-on-one ball up there, and you need somebody who's got the length to go up and get it. And naturally, your bigger guys, your more physical guys are going to be the ones to do that. So you see more opportunities for Brown. You see Mardner getting involved really early. You see Fairweather getting involved real early. And then you still see a lot of the other tight ends trying to take that step forward. Landen King's going to be a wide receiver in this offense. can he continue to kind of take steps and strides? Because I think he's much like Mardner and Brown in that he can be a difference maker for you because of his size out wide. And Auburn just hasn't had that. I mean, Seth Williams was the last receiver for Auburn to have a really good season catching contested balls. And so they have been desperately looking for that next guy. I think with this coaching staff and this roster, you can kind of put it together. You can kind of have that union between your passing game, having the weapons down the middle of the field, but also being able to win those one-on-one opportunities on the outside.
Right. So there's been a lot of talk, a lot of excitement about Nick Mardner. He looks the part, right?
It's huge.
But he's just kind of been okay at every stop that he's been, or he's been fine, right? And like with Cincinnati, it's like he wasn't this elite wide receiver. What are realistic expectations for what Auburn needs him to do? Because they don't need him to be 1,000-yard receiver.
No.
But can he be a 500-yard receiver in this offense?
Yeah, his season at Hawaii with Marcus Davis, I think he was at 700 or something like that, about 5 or 6 touchdowns, which, I mean, heck, you get that kind of production at Auburn, you're one of the best receivers of the last decade here.
Wild.
But, yeah, I mean, I think you can you be a guy that I think like the best case scenario, I think, for Nick Mardner is that he is a very productive top 4 receiver for you this year, top 4, top 5 at wide receiver. So that with what you bring back in Javarius Johnson and Coy Moore and potentially with Camden Brown taking that next step, you can have an offense, that isn't necessarily, one guy's going to go out and go wild. You would love that if you have that ability. Yeah. But for Mardner, can you be one of those guys that when Auburn drops back a pass and they're running 4 dudes out in the pattern, you can trust that all 4 of those guys can make you a play. Like not one of those things where it's like, well, the ball is definitely going to be going to this guy or the ball is definitely going to be going to this side of the field. They need to have a balanced, spread out attack because that is what Philip Montgomery's offenses have been built on in the past. Isolating things, getting favorable matchups and winning those matchups downfield. Like that's what they want to do. They want to stretch it vertically and horizontally. Nick Mardner can definitely be one of those parts because if you are spreading them out, a 6'6" guy may get drawn up against a 6'1" or 6 foot corner, maybe even shorter. You got to throw that ball up there and have the confidence that he can go get it.
Ferg, there were a few things that we saw on Monday, specifically with the offensive line, that surprised both of us. Let's touch on that in just a moment. Right here on Locked On Auburn. Today's show brought to you by the FanDuel Sportsbook. Ferg, right now, the line for Auburn to win the NCAA championship, it is plus 10,000.
Why not?
Why not? Why not throw a couple down on the Tigers to go on an absolutely ridiculous run? We'll see. We'll see what happens. But yeah, be sure to check out FanDuel.com/lockedon to take advantage of their no sweat first bet up to $1,000. It's bonus bets back if your first bet doesn't win. FanDuel.com/lockedon. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sports betting partner of the NBA. Tate Johnson at guard. Did you see that coming? Because I did not.
Nope. Tate Johnson at guard. You also Jaleel Irvin at guard as well. It's really interesting because these guys have had their careers pretty much at center for Auburn.
Yeah.
But I think that communicates a couple of things. I think number one, for the most part, I mean, I'd be 99% sure that Avery Jones is going to be your starting center this year.
He looks incredible, Ferg.
Yeah. Those guys, those transfers that they brought in, I think are, they're gonna play the part. The interesting thing will come with tackles, but we can talk about that in a second, I'm sure.
Yeah.
But the guard spot, like who do you have? Because you do have Jeremiah Wright, you do have Kam Stutts, and it's like, what is that next? What does that depth look like? What does that next wave look like? Because you got to develop it. So if Tate Johnson, obviously Tate Johnson last season thrown into a really tough spot when Nick Brahms had to retire.
Sure.
And, he had a hard time at center. I mean, just statistically, the whole team struggled, but he had a hard time. Goes down with an injury. Maybe a move to guard could be the thing to kind of, find a way to maybe reset his career some here. So I think that's an interesting pick.
Does moving into guard kind of hint like maybe they see something in him because he's not going to see the field at center. Maybe he can do something at guard. That's kind of the way I saw it. Like maybe they like Tate Johnson here.
Yeah, you have some experience as a starter. And your guard spots, like, Kam Stutts has started some, Jeremiah Wright has started some. but you want competition everywhere. In spring ball, they're not going to be focusing on like, cutting down the reps or getting everybody this is about, hey, let's see what we got and give everybody a shot, and then we'll figure those things out in the fall. But I do think Tate Johnson does make sense as a guy that you can move to guard and say, hey, can you compete? Could you potentially be a guy? Maybe this is a better fit for you. Maybe this scheme is going to be better for you in this sense. So him, and then obviously Jaleel Irvin, another thing, like just to have a dude who has played before and be that experience just at guard. Kam Stutts, same thing. It's gonna be interesting to see what those guard spots do. And then you have, if I remember correctly, it was Connor Lew was at center behind Avery Jones. It's like, all right, you're getting Avery Jones for a year, I think. I don't know if he can come back for another one.
I think this is his COVID year.
I'm pretty sure that you're right. Connor Lew, all right, one of your highly touted guys. I mean, a lot of the recruiting folks were really, really high on Connor Lew when he came into Auburn. It's like, this is your chance to kind of develop a dude that hopefully, we'll see. I'm sure. I mean, it's just one practice and you can move guys around as time goes on. But I think Auburn's best case scenario is that you have a year of Avery Jones, you succeed with a year of Avery Jones, and you can turn it over to Connor Lew and say, hey, can you be our guy for multiple seasons as a center? And so that by the time he is an upperclassman, you've got this really just locked down position. And you think about some of the great teams and the great offenses that Auburn has had over the last couple of decades, that center spot has been really, really important. And it's usually a guy who's played a lot of football by the time they get to be very, very successful. So it's a good plan. It's a good timeline if Auburn can stick to it.
It is. And like Connor Lew was generating, before Avery Jones committed via the portal there. I mean, there was talk of like, can Connor Lew start? I mean, I don't think it was plan A, but I think that was definitely a discussion that was being had in certain Auburn circles. So the fact now that he gets to sit for a year, maybe redshirt, we'll see how that works, and come in and be a favorite to start as a redshirt freshman or a true sophomore. Like, I think that's awesome because a lot of really, really top-notch schools wanted this kid. He wasn't rated super high, but like centers typically aren't, interior linemen typically aren't. And I think he can hit the ground running as as one of the guys next year, which is great.
Yeah, and I think it's one of those things where you look at LSU last season, they ended up starting several true freshmen on their offensive line because they had to. Auburn is in a very, good position, as I wrote about earlier this winter. Like, no one has ever signed this many FBS transfers that were 4-star rated in the portal era. And so Auburn went above and beyond what they got in the portal so that they have that flexibility now. But yeah, I mean, Lew was a guy that people were talking about that, could at least play right away, if not start right away on the offensive line, which is difficult. And then, the tackle position with Wade and Britton, like that makes a ton of sense. Wade, obviously, with the experience of playing in Philip Montgomery's system. Britton, a guy who was really, really good in a pass-heavy offense last season at Western Kentucky. And then I'm looking at Isaiah Miller, too, just to see what it looks like. Because, I mean, obviously, big dude, too tall. Yeah. He goes out there and really is impressive. You need to have a guy and multiple guys at tackle who can step up and be ready for you if something happens to your starters. But I also wonder with Isaiah Miller, just thinking out loud, is he a guy that you could potentially say, hey, you're not one of our top 2 tackles, but you might be one of our top 5 linemen. I think he might could have some. I'm going to keep an eye. I'm going to keep an eye on him too. Not to say Auburn doesn't like who they've got at guard. We just talked about having Tate Johnson there and they're being competitive. But like I'm looking at Isaiah Miller. If those FBS transfers, those rentals, lock it in like we think they are, is Miller a guy who obviously was loved by the staff? Is he a guy that could be on the move as well? Because I just think it was early. You want to get a foundation set. I do think throughout the spring, I wouldn't be surprised if you see some mixing and matching going on.
Yeah, I think we will. And just to put a bow on the center talk, Court Bradley, the third center that we saw this past Monday. Take that for what you will. Yeah, the tackles, I was surprised that Dillon all offseason, I've been projecting Wade as the right tackle and Gunnar Britton as the left tackle just because Gunnar Britton's so good at pass protection and like you put him on the left side, but that's not what we saw on Monday.
Yeah, Wade, it was the left tackle at Tulsa.
Right.
So I think keeping him there, obviously he knows the system with Philip Montgomery. And Britton was a guy who moved around more at Western Kentucky. So I think that's it. It's this day and age in football. I mean, as much as anybody does, but like this day and age in football, you take out of the shotgun, you need both your tackles. I mean, the
right.
whole thought of the blind side is smart, and like that's usually where your best guy is. But also, like if you're taking shotgun snaps and you're trying to throw the ball as much as a lot of these modern offenses do, your right tackle's got to be just as good as your left tackle at pass pro. So I do think Auburn's got a couple of really good weapons there. I do think, familiarity. I think with Wade being on that left side in this system is kind of what they wanted to lean on there.
It makes sense. But yeah, just talking to folks that were there for the whole practice, Ferg, not just the 20 minutes we got to see. I mean, it just sounds like the offensive line elevated to a level and played at a level in practice that several guys that have been at Auburn for the past few years were like, yeah, we've never seen this in practice before, like that level of competency across the offensive front five. And that's just something Auburn fans have been wanting to hear for the better part of a decade.
Absolutely. I mean, you got to go all the way back to really the 17 season, maybe some of the 19, when you felt really good about Auburn's offensive line. I think 17 was probably the last one. And yeah, I mean, that group, think about that group that they had. You had dudes who had played before at Auburn and some really good players, obviously, at that point. But you also got some transfers and some dudes who were hungry. I think about, the Casey Dunn. You had Avery Young was there as well. I mean, like you had just a number of guys. I am blanking on the big dude from Texas. Why
Braden.
am I blanking? No. The Texas transfer. I'm going to get it at some point. Darius James. Like you had.
Oh yeah. He was like so solid. Right.
Right. You had these transfers who came in and helped raise your level with guys who had already been here. And I think if Auburn can build that over the next couple of seasons, that's exactly what you want, because that's the last time you had a really good offensive line. And yes, apologies to Darius James. He was really good. Man, he was a 5-star coming out of high school. And then Auburn picked him off out of Texas. Obviously, Austin Golson and Casey Dunn, and you had some other guys as well. You got to build that again with that especially now in the portal era. You can do it a little bit more probably frequently with transfer guys, but build it up. I mean, it's like recruiting in general for Auburn. It's great to have the start that they had, right? Hugh Freeze and his staff have been excellent right off the bat and exactly what you wanted, but this is going to be a multiple-year process. All the damage that was done over the last 4 or 5 years, it's not going to be fixed with just one. But it is a great start, and I think you're seeing some of the benefits of that early on the offensive line.
There's no doubt. There's no doubt about it. All right, what are some changes we could expect to see during Monday's viewing window? Let's discuss and speculate that in just a second right here on Locked On Auburn. If you're looking for a delicious treat, but you don't want all the fat and calories, and you've got to try Built Bar. You used to just have to order these things online at built.com, but now you can go to Walmart or your Sam's Club and check out all kinds of different boxes of bars that are available there. Of course, you can still go to built.com and check out all of this stuff, but yeah, highly recommend the Built Puffs. They are delicious. So head over to Sam's Club or Walmart or built.com today. All right, Ferg, what are some changes you would anticipate potentially seeing as far as the pecking order? And I know Coach Freeze said that they're not worried about the depth chart or anything like that, but it's fine. People still have to go in a certain order, right? Like you still got to line up guys first. Any potential changes? I think we talked about a few on the offensive line that we may see. Maybe you move one of the backup tackles inside. Maybe you flip the transfer tackles just to see what it looks like. Maybe you do a few things there. What are some other potential changes we may see, and not even necessarily Monday, but just throughout spring?
I like to see the on defense, just the interchangeability of some of those position groups. I looked at the tackles and ends and noses on that defensive line room. I mean, there's a lot of big dudes, and there's a lot of big dudes. Like you can tell who your noses are, but those tackles and ends and like who works with who and what combos they use up front they're gonna be very interested to see. I like obviously Jeffrey Emba and Marcus Harris together, but like what else do you get in some of the new guys coming in, and where do they all kind of fit together when you try to find those front threes that you want to lean on? Linebacker combos. I mean, I didn't spend a ton of time at linebacker, but I do know like I had like this guy was with this guy and this guy was with this guy, and then I had somebody ask me in the comments, they're like, oh, well, I read something from someone else who had, this guy with this guy. And I was like, yeah, because we probably were watching things at the same time or at different times. And so you can kind of have that interchangeability. And I'm very interested. We talked to Zach Etheridge on Tuesday. I'm very interested in the star position in Ron Roberts' defense. In terms of it's a nickel, and you want to be able to do some of everything, like every fifth defensive back in a system. But in Ron Roberts' system in the past, those stars usually have been some of their more productive guys for tackles for loss. They blitz them more. They're really good in run support. Who's going to be the guy there is going to be interesting. They're looking at Keontae Scott. They're looking at Donovan Kaufman. Also looking at, I believe Caleb Wooden's also getting some reps there. I do think those safeties and nickels, I think they want that interchangeability so that, at any given time, they can be able to kind of run somebody downhill and make those plays, or kick them to the inside for coverage options. So that's going to be interesting to see. And then, corners. Don't have a ton of them right now in the scholarship room, in the scholarship side.
Right.
But I think that's just going to be huge for JD Rim and K and Lee this spring. I mean, to be by default the second guys behind Nehemiah Pritchett and DJ James, I think is going to be big for them. And I just want to continue to see how those guys develop.
Yeah, I think that's just more proof of Auburn's totally fine in that room moving forward.
And they're bringing in 7 dudes in the summer, and most of those guys are probably projected out to be corners, so they'll be fine.
Yeah, they're going to be okay. Yeah, the Hood guy that was committed to Michigan State, I think
Colton Hood.
Colton. Yeah, I think he could contribute early. So
yeah, you got JC Hart. You got a number of guys are going to be corners that are going to be coming in.
Is JC Hart a corner? I mean, I'm hearing things all over the place about what JC Hart is.
I mean, that's what he played in high school. I mean, but he's a big corner for sure.
I like him more at corner than receiver. I know there's a lot of talk about him playing receiver, but I really like him at corner. So.
He's a really good cornerback, and just the size and the speed. And then again, I mean, I will pound the mat for JC Hart all the time, because a couple things. I mean, one, he's a local kid.
Sure,
dude this is his dream school. He's a great athlete. He's a fantastic athlete. And I know he's coming from 1A football in Alabama, but there's just something about those dudes, especially those small school in-state guys at defensive back. And I mean, this kid's going to work hard. He's going to work extremely hard for this opportunity. So keep an eye. It'll be in the fall, but JC Hart.
I love long, big corners that just beat the crap out of you. Yeah. And JC Hart can do it. I'm not saying he can do it day one, but he'll be able to do it.
It's a step up in difficulty level for sure, going from 1A football to the SEC. Everybody knows that, but it's a big step for everybody coming from high school. Auburn's track record with these in-state kids, but a hyper-local kid who wanted nothing more than to play football at Auburn. I think that's good. I think that's going to carry him a long way.
I'm with you, man. How can people check out everything going on at the Auburn Observer?
Well, I say it a lot. It's the perfect time to sign up for the Observer. I really mean it this time. This is not me blowing smoke. We've got spring football going on right now. We've got the end of the regular season and the postseason coming up in basketball. So, I mean, we're putting out stuff pretty much every day of the week, sometimes multiple things every day of the week. So a lot of football, a lot of basketball analysis. And if you want to be a new subscriber for a year, it's $40 for the year. We're doing, instead of 60, we're doing 40. That's going to run all the way through 8-day weekend. So you've got time. We're just, if you sign up right now at $40 will get you all of spring football, all of basketball's postseason, all the summer, all of football season next year, and pretty much all of basketball season next year. All you got to do is pay. You're in. We email everything to you. AuburnObserver.com. There's a ton of stuff coming out right now. And yeah, big weekend obviously coming up in basketball. I'll be in Nashville next week for the SECs, and then we'll see where this Tiger team goes in the postseason. Right. But we'll be doing that and football at the same time. It's a busy time, but it's the best time of year. Sign up.
It's fun. No joke about it. And I pay full price. So I think that's fun. You should do it. You should do it. You can find all my written work at auburndaily.com, and we will see you tomorrow. This has been Locked On Auburn.